I am part of a bipartisan group of senators who've introduced a package of almost a dozen bills to try to address one of the great scourges of our time, which is trafficking in persons. And specifically, these bills address trafficking for purposes of sexual services. What a lot of people don't realize is worldwide and in the United States and in the state of Washington and in our own communities, there are a lot of people who are forced into sex work against their will. They're forced into it through a variety of techniques, such as threats, drugs, sometimes sort of kidnapping, threats against their family, and they live in horrible situations, and they're forced to engage in these activities, which would include prostitution or strip dancing or whatever. And so we have a number of bills that are bipartisan. So, for example, one of them attempts to get at the problem of advertising in some of the weekly newspapers and online for, quote, escorts. And these are really for sexual services. What a lot of people don't realize is many of the victims, especially young women, are teenagers, so they're underage. And they are particularly victims of advertising, such as on Backpage.com. And it's very hard to track this. But Senator Colwell's has a bill that attempts to get at the problem of advertising on Backpage.com and either eliminate it or reduce it substantially, basically by requiring people who place ads to certify that none of the people they are sending out on assignment, you might say, are under 18. So then we have a number of other bills increasing penalties in various ways, allowing teenage girls who are convicted of prostitution, but it was a result of being forced into it through trafficking, to get their sentences vacated. Because if you have a sentence, then you can't get a job, and it's very hard to get your life back. Senator Kaiser has a bill in trying to better regulate foot massage, because apparently in too many of these establishments, which seem to be quite proliferating, there are inappropriate activities taking place. So this would strengthen the licensing of those kinds of establishments to try to prevent or reduce the amount of illegal activity. So that's a major package we're working on, and most of the bills are moving. So I expect at some point we'll see them on the floor. Well, according to the calendar, we are about halfway through the legislative session now. This is a 60-day session. We had a very big week last week. Friday was the deadline for bills to come out of their committee of origin. So with that deadline, a lot of bills die, and the more important ones and the ones that are more supported move ahead. Then this coming week will be the deadline for bills to get out of fiscal committees, such as Ways and Means committees and transportation committees. So this will be a very, very, very busy time for these committees and the members and the chairs and the staff, as a blizzard of bills are considered before the deadline. Following that, we'll have about a week for anything that comes out of committee that also makes it through rules to be considered on the floor of the Senate, and that's a blizzard time, one bill after another for all the members of the Senate. So please, if you are following a piece of legislation and want me to know about it, please get your opinion in as soon as possible, because things are going to be happening very, very quickly, beginning about now. I really appreciate hearing from constituents on the wide variety of issues that we have before us. Of course, the biggest amount of input I've received is on budget issues. The budget is front and center this session. The state revenues are down, continue to be down, even though you read that in other parts of the country the economy is picking up. And maybe it's picking up here, but we sure aren't seeing it on revenue. We've already cut billions of dollars out of the budget. And then in our special session in December, we cut another $500 million. We have $1.5 billion left that we have to cut. So I am among those who want to put a revenue package on the ballot. So I've heard from people not only about the spending priorities in the budget and what people don't want cut, which is really everything, but also I'm hearing from people on revenue. A lot of people would like to see us put a revenue measure on the ballot. Whether we will or not depends on whether we can get enough votes. The questions will be, what should the size of the revenue package be? And what should the components be? The state's revenues are essentially the sales tax, the business and occupation tax, and the property tax. So those are the big ones. Our state doesn't have an income tax. The legislature could enact one of up to 1%. Other than that, it would take a constitutional amendment. So I'm hearing from a lot of people about how sad they are and how distressed they are and how concerned they are about people's lives if we have to cut, for example, health care for low-income people, including children and the elderly, if we have to cut social services that help people with special needs stay in their homes. The problem of undermining our economy and our future by underfunding K-12 education and underfunding higher education. Our state constitution makes K-12 education a big priority. It does not make higher education a priority, although we all know how important that is. So that's one of the reasons that, well, that's the main reason that tuition has gone up in recent years, is as the revenues go down and the state has to prioritize K-12, which amounts to around 43% or so of the general fund budget. That gets a higher priority than higher education, unfortunately. So it's a very difficult time. We will have to pass an all-cuts budget, meaning when we adopt a budget that is balanced, rebalanced with our new lower revenues, we'll have to make it all cuts, and then if we're able to put a revenue measure on the ballot, it would buy back some of the cuts that we made, but not all of them. For example, the governor recommended buying back just 25% of the cuts. Some members would like to buy back 50% of the cuts. I'm sure we will never buy back 100%. Just not possible. We can't raise taxes that much. So I hope we'll be putting a revenue measure on the ballot for voters to vote on sometime this spring.